Imagine a man. He isn't rich. He doesn't drive a luxury car. He doesn't trade stocks. He doesn't own Bitcoin. He doesn't even buy expensive coffee. Every morning, he takes the same crowded train to work. Every afternoon, he eats a cheap convenience store lunch. Every month, he earns somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 a year. By almost every modern definition, he's painfully ordinary. And yet, by the time he retires, under the right conditions, his retirement portfolio could quietly grow into 7 figures. Now compare that with a very different story. Across the Pacific, many people earning 6-figure salaries still arrive at retirement with surprisingly little wealth to show for decades of high income. Same world, very different outcomes. So here's the question. If money isn't the difference, what is?
Let's call him Tanaka-san. Not a real person, but a composite, built from the patterns you see again and again among Japan's corporate workforce. 42 years old, works at a major financial institution in downtown Tokyo. He's been there since he was 22. Same desk, same badge, same gray suit he bought at a chain store for under $100. He lives in company housing in the suburbs, a small apartment that can cost as little as $250 to $300 a month. He takes the same train line to work every single day. He doesn't own a car, doesn't drink Starbucks. His biggest weekly splurge is a sweet bun from the bakery near his station. And honestly, I find this guy more interesting than any billionaire I've ever studied. Because Tanaka-san isn't doing anything flashy. He's not trading options. He's not buying Bitcoin. He's not running a side hustle or drop shipping phone cases from Shenzhen. He's just showing up, collecting his paycheck, going home, watching baseball, sleeping. And somehow, the math works out. So how? The first thing you've got to understand is that Tanaka-san never sees a chunk of his paycheck. Never. It's gone before it hits his account. His company automatically deducts it for employee pension, health insurance, and this is the big one, the company savings scheme. Different firms call it different things. Some run it through a credit union, others through an in-house mutual aid association. The name changes, the mechanism doesn't. Your employer takes the money, puts it in a pooled fund. You generally can't touch it until you quit or retire. There's no app, no dashboard, no should I YOLO this into Tesla moment. For the most part, you don't get a choice. And here's what nobody tells you about this system. It sounds oppressive, right? Like, who wants their boss controlling their money? But Tanaka-san's been doing this for 20 years. That automatic deduction, plus employer contributions where they exist, plus the slow accumulation in regular savings vehicles, it adds up to a significant pile before he even tries. He wasn't obsessing over budgeting. He didn't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He didn't watch a single finance video. Saving wasn't an act of discipline. It was simply the path of least resistance.
Now, the second piece. Tanaka-san pays a fraction of market rent in a city where the average one-bedroom can easily run over $1,000, because his company still runs something called shotaku, company housing. It's a relic from the post-war era that most Western companies abandoned decades ago. But in Japan, it remains common in many large corporations, particularly traditional banks and manufacturers. You get a small apartment. It's not glamorous. The walls are thin, the bathroom is the size of an airplane lavatory, but you're not burning 40% of your income on housing like the average American. So Tanaka-san's fixed costs stay tiny. His commute is covered by a company-sponsored pass. His lunch is 700 yen from the kombini. He doesn't need a car because the train system actually works. He doesn't worry about medical bankruptcy because health costs are capped by law and already deducted from his pay. His entire life is designed to make saving the default. And here's where it gets weird. For most of Tanaka-san's adult life, putting money in a Japanese bank was actually kind of pointless. Interest rates were zero, sometimes negative. You deposited cash and it basically flatlined. For roughly 3 decades, from the mid-90s until recently, the Bank of Japan kept rates at basically zero. So Tanaka-san's pile wasn't growing from interest, it was just sitting there. But he kept putting money in anyway, because the system kept nudging him, because it's what everyone did, because the alternative, spending it, felt wrong. And then, in March 2024, something flipped. The Bank of Japan raised interest rates for the first time in 17 years. By 2026, regular savings accounts are finally paying small but real returns. NISA accounts, that's Japan's tax-free investment wrapper, similar to a Roth IRA, are seeing gains for the first time in a generation. iDeco, the individual defined contribution pension, is becoming genuinely attractive.
Tanaka-san didn't plan for this. He didn't predict the rate hike. He just kept shoveling money into boring vehicles because that's what the paperwork told him to do. And now, for the first time in his life, that cash is actually multiplying. Look, I've read a lot about this topic, and this detail changes everything. We always talk about Japan's lost decades like it was a tragedy, and it was, for the economy, for growth, for innovation. But for the average salaryman who was forced to save, who never had the temptation of a booming stock market or a red-hot housing market, the lost decades were actually a forced discipline machine. While Americans were cashing out home equity to buy boats, Tanaka-san was putting 10,000 yen a month into a zero-interest account. It felt pointless. It felt boring. It felt like he was falling behind. But he wasn't falling behind. He was just playing a different game. Now let's do the math, because a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, he saves automatically, but how does that actually build real wealth?
Let's say Tanaka-san puts away the equivalent of $500 a month through payroll deductions and pension contributions. That's $6,000 a year. Over 38 years, that's $228,000 in raw contributions. Now add in the employee pension insurance. That's mandatory, and both employer and employee pay into it. Add any company-sponsored savings where the employer also chips in. Some firms do this, others don't. The structure varies widely. Then factor in that by the time Tanaka-san retires, economists often treat his future pension payments as a valuable financial asset when estimating lifetime retirement wealth, often worth several $100,000 in present value. And now with NISA accounts and iDeco finally offering real returns, even modest growth on the invested portion starts to matter. Put it all together. The forced savings, the pension, the low fixed costs that let him save more than his American counterpart, and the new interest rate environment, and a seven-figure retirement portfolio stops looking impossible. Under the right assumptions, it's a realistic outcome. Consistency, time, and a system that makes opting out difficult. Now, I want to be real with you for a second. This system is cracking. Japan's lifetime employment model is fading. Precarious work, part-timers, dispatch workers, contract staff now makes up a huge chunk of the workforce. They don't get company housing. They don't get the automatic savings scheme. They don't get the same pension. And the birth rate collapse means fewer young workers will be paying into the pension system to support retirees. The government has already acknowledged that future payouts may not keep pace with promises. So that nest egg Tanaka-san is sitting on, it's not a bonus, it's survival. Here's the thing that bothers me about this whole story. We look at Tanaka-san and we think, wow, the Japanese are so disciplined, so culturally superior with money. But that's not it. Tanaka-san isn't disciplined. He's not special. The system nudged him toward building wealth, the same way the American system nudges people toward spending it. The difference isn't culture, it's architecture. In America, your paycheck hits your account and then it's up to you. You have to opt into your 401k. You have to choose your health plan. You have to decide whether to save or spend. You have to be the hero of your own financial story. And most people fail because most people aren't heroes. Most people are tired. Most people make bad decisions at 11 p.m. while scrolling Amazon. In Japan, many workplace and public institutions are designed to reduce the need for constant financial decision-making. The system makes saving the default, so it removes the choice. Tanaka-san didn't choose to save 15%. It was chosen for him. He didn't choose to live in a tiny apartment. It was assigned to him. He didn't choose to take the train. The company paid for the pass. Every decision that built his wealth was made by someone else, years ago, in a conference room he will never enter. And honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about that. On one hand, he's going to retire with real assets. On the other hand, he spent his entire adult life in a 30 square meter box,
wearing the same suit, eating the same lunch, taking the same train. He rarely had incentives to take big risks. The system gave him very little reason to.
So, here's my question to you. Would you trade your freedom for financial security? Because that's the trade-off many Japanese salarymen accepted. And it's the deal millions of them have been taking since the 1960s. A comfortable prison. A predictable path. A life where wealth is the side effect of obedience. The American system says, be free, be creative, take risks, and if you fail, it's on you. The Japanese system says, follow the rules, trust the machine, and we'll make sure you don't starve. Neither one is perfect. Neither one is evil. They're just different traps. But here's what I keep coming back to. Tanaka-san is 60 years old. He's got a meaningful nest egg, a small apartment, and a pension that might or might not be there in 10 years. He's not rich by American standards. He can't buy a yacht, can't retire to Florida, can't even really retire early. Japanese pension age keeps climbing. But he's not scared. And that, I think, is the whole point. The boring secret isn't about getting rich. It's about not being scared.